Salvia, Bachman,
Here.
Clauser,
Here.
Hardin,
Here.
Kenjuk,
Here.
Murphy, Stone.
Here.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. If you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to have public comments. Anyone from the public wish to make any statement or comment? Okay. If it's not regarding the public hearing, please come.
My question, so for public hearing, things for the zoning?
Yeah, if it's regarding the public hearings, it'd be best to wait till the agenda item comes up. If nothing else, we'll move on. Before we go into approval of meeting minutes, I want to welcome a new planning commission member, David Hardin. He will be joining us here. So we welcome you.
Thank
and
you.
Hopefully, if you need any assistance along the way, administration or planning commission members will be at your side.
Great.
Okay, approval of meeting minutes. Is there a motion for that, considering what we received for February 3rd?
So moved.
The motion approved.
Support.
We have support. Any questions on that? Roll call.
Gasson,
Here, yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Bachman,
Yes.
Clauser,
Yes.
Hardin,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
Stone.
Yes.
We also have meeting minutes for the joint planning commission meeting with the city council from January 23rd. Motion on that?
I have a comment about the minutes. I didn't see in there, we talked about 3 amendments as a next step or a phase after we get through this process. And I think Vidya talks about it in her presentation, but I didn't know if we needed to include those amendments that we talked about coming back to in the meeting minutes, or if we can just talk about it when we get to the zoning section with Vidya. We talked about the design standards for section 2118, which I think Vidya has mentioned in her presentation. We talked about environmental standards and looking at pervious surfaces. Correct.
It wouldn't hurt to have it in there. I don't know if that Rose goes into that depth on her minutes, but Leanne took them, so we can do that.
And the last one then was obtainable housing. And they're just things that we said we wanted to come back to, so I just want to make sure we don't lose them.
We can amend the minutes. We can bring back the minutes with those amendments, or we can make them subject to corrected amendments, and then we can do it either way. But yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, thanks.
Would you like to make a motion
I
according to that?
would love to make a motion. Do I need to repeat all that? I can. I
Go right ahead.
make a motion to approve the minutes with adding the 3 amendments for zoning to come back to, or as next steps. They were design standards, environmental standards, and then obtainable housing standards.
Okay. Do I have a second on the motion amended?
Support.
Support by Mr. Kenzu. Did I get that right? Or Mr. Bachman?
Oh, Bachman.
Sorry. Okay, any question on the motion? Roll call.
Gasson,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Bachman,
Yes.
Clauser,
Yes.
Hardin,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
Stone.
Yes.
Okay, before we move into the agenda items for us tonight for action, I'd like to suggest or offer a change in agenda order. Administration asked that we move item 7A forward, if we can do that by motion. I'd appreciate it.
I'll make a motion to move agenda item 7A up to the front.
Support.
I'll support.
Support by Commissioner Clauser. Any question on the motion? Roll call. Yea or nay? All yeas, all nays?
Yay.
Yay.
Okay.
Yay.
Okay.
Oh, yay.
All right. Okay, and the applicant is here,
I can lead in if you
or
would.
if you would, Mr. Manager, lead in
So
for us.
Christie, come on up. So this is to do with the future grant project, and Planning Commission went through this a few months ago, and we approved the site plan, elevations, et cetera, for the grant. And David, for you, it's the old Veterinarian's Hospital on 2nd Street. The DDA had purchased that building to turn it into a year-round farmers market event space. Got through all of that. During the due diligence, as I know Mr. Gasson, you'll know this better than anybody, and Matt, you probably too, that they came across things unexpected in the building that are going to look to have them demolish basically the building down to this to the steel frame. The walls were worse than they thought, so they're going to clear that out, which would give them an opportunity to change the facade instead of being stuck with what was there, to redraw the facade more in line with what they would like to, the heritage of that building. At the same time, we approved the sheds, the carport sheds, if you will, for shade on the west side of the property. Now with this relook, there's an opportunity to put an awning adjacent to the front roll-up doors and make it more practical experience. So the DDA's evaluating that with their architect right now. We're not quite ready with the plans, but we would like to keep this on track so that we would set the public hearing that will have full drawings finished and everything to be in front of you at your April meeting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll get them this week or so. We've seen them. It's a nice upgrade to the building, so nothing that they had, could foresee to happen. It just happened when they did the due diligence of doing the demolition on the inside of that building. It was a little bit worse than they thought. Not Christie's favorite day, I think I could say.
Wasn't fun, did not enjoy, 0 stars, would not recommend.
Yeah, it was a bad day. So so is that about right?
I think that's a fair assessment. With the building, of course, we are trying, as we are being good stewards of the taxpayer money, we wanted to use what we could, but unfortunately, after they did the interior demo, you could see daylight in many places from the inside, and I'm not in construction, but I believe that's bad. But then as they kept looking at it, we thought at first it was just gonna be the west wall, but we were already cutting that mostly into garage door openings, so it wasn't that big a deal. And then when they brought in some experts to really look at it, they found that both the south wall and the east wall were in very bad shape. And for what we wanted to do, they felt strongly that, as Nick said, that we need to take them down. Keep the structure itself is still solid. This is giving us an opportunity, like we said, to move those shade structures over, actually extend a shade structure on the south end of the building, which you'll see next month, and also add some additional windows on the east side of the building. So I think it's absolutely an upgrade. The current building has a lot of drive-in on it, which we weren't in love with, but again, we were going to repair and maintain that. Now, the exterior that will be coming back to you has a lot of steel on the exterior, which we think is definitely an upgrade, but still basically the same look of everything that you saw previously, keeping with the spirit of that, being sensitive to the architecture in the area. But if I didn't tell you and you didn't know, looking at it through a planning commission lens, I don't know that you'd notice what we did other than the extra windows, but we need to come back and see you. So our plans will be to the city this week for videos review, and then we'd like to be back before you with a public hearing on April 7th.
Yep, so the parking lot, nothing changed. The add-on stage, nothing changed. 88, nothing changed. It's literally
strictly
the structure of the building, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you mentioned windows, so there's a element of a site plan review component to it. So essentially, this is a consideration item. It was being brought as a miscellaneous item,
To
which is
schedule.
typically
To
info.
schedule.
So even consideration is where we would hear a scheduling typically, right?
Right, but we didn't have the drawings, so we didn't want to put it under that formality. We're comfortable with, talk to Vinnie that we can get it scheduled, and then, so we're not talking about the actual details tonight.
And that's kind of where I was leading. So
Okay.
this is a little bit different than our
is.
normal consideration to set a public hearing.
Correct.
And normally, we've all seen what you've just verbally described, the changes. It sounds minor, low impact, but
It's
Vinnie
different.
has seen some of this?
Yep.
Okay. And Vinnie, you're in line. Are you generally comfortable that your review of it is what we would normally expect when we get to the point of seeing it for site plan approval?
Yes, Mr. Gesson, I am.
Okay. So with that, I guess I'm comfortable that we're making a consideration to set a public hearing. I'll ask the commission, do you have any issue with this approach to getting something set as a public hearing? I wouldn't think so. So I'll entertain, yes, Commissioner Clauser?
Just one comment. Did you say there was net more shade or net less shade?
I think at the end of the day, it's gonna be more shade, because we took out the carports, which we were
Yeah.
still struggling with how that was going to interact with everything.
Yeah.
Before, because of the drive-it, we couldn't attach anything to it. Now it's actually gonna be coming over, we're creating along the entire west side of the building, there's going to be a new shade canopy, if you will.
Okay.
Canopy might be an overstatement, but shade. And then, on the south side of the building where there was an outdoor patio, we're now matching that same shade and coming out on the south end of the building. So I think net, we're probably gonna add some, yes.
That was just a big topic last time, so that'd
Yep.
be my
Yep, it
comment.
was.
Yep, lots of shade.
Actually, the person that was really brought that up saw it and was like, this is way better. 'Cause
Yeah,
it is. It's really cool.
it makes a lot more sense. It flows better with the rest of it. Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner, so as we're thinking of this as a consideration item, action, to set a public hearing is what I'm asking for, a motion to do so.
I can motion
Okay?
to set a public hearing.
I'm all ears.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion to set a public hearing at the next possible meeting for a site plan amendment, and we have support by Mr. Stone. Any question on that motion? Roll call?
Gasson,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Bachman,
Yes.
Clauser,
Yes.
Harden,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
Stone.
Yes.
Excellent. We'll see you next month.
Thank you so much.
We won't make
now-
we won't make it a habit of that. It was just timing, because they didn't expect this to happen, so. went with it.
I think we're all generally familiar with what, and based on the verbal, except for Mr. Harden, but you'll see next month. So I think it worked out just the way it needed to. Public hearings tonight, we have 3. There's a little bit in the audience, so we're hoping to hear from all of you on the subject that's important to you. And we have the first one, which is regarding the zoning ordinance amendment as a following action for our master plan. And we're going to have a number of districts that we're going to be adding into it by amendment, and we're going to turn that over to Vidya, unless administration has any introduction they would like to make. So Vidya, you and John, are you alone? It's all yours.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Gasson, members of the commission. It's just going to be me tonight. Before I start the presentation on the district text, I would like to provide some clarification for the benefit of the residents who are in the audience and those residents who are actually on the Zoom call tonight. First and foremost, the public hearing tonight before the Planning Commission is for adoption of district texts only. This is not a map amendment. If you saw the Planning Commission packet that is posted online and you saw a zoning map in it, the map is for information purposes only. It is a draft map. The Planning Commission is not taking any action tonight on rezoning any parcel. They're not changing the zoning designation on any parcel. They're not making a recommendation to City Council on changing the zoning on any single parcel. They are simply going to make a recommendation on the text of all of these districts. The reason why we included a zoning map in the packet is so when I am describing these texts, the Planning Commission and all of you residents have a context to put together what I'm talking about. If I just go on describing a whole bunch of text, it's a little difficult to understand what I'm talking about. So it was my hope when we included this draft zoning map in there, when I'm describing these texts as I go about, you'll be able to understand where these various districts are placed. So please be aware that the public hearing tonight is only for the text of the district. It is not for this map. This map will be presented at a public hearing at a later date before the Planning Commission. There will be a lot of public outreach done before the meeting for all of your input, and it will be recommended to the City Council at a later date. So for tonight, we are only going over the district text. I am going to share the zoning map that I mentioned on my screen tonight. I hope everybody can actually see the zoning map. Okay, this is the draft zoning map. So tonight for a public hearing, even though there were only 4 main zoning districts that still required public hearing before the Planning Commission, in the interest of clarity, in consultation with the city manager and the city attorney, we decided to post all 10 zoning districts that are going to be revised for a public hearing. These 10 zoning districts include the Central Business District, which is the core downtown. I'll point it at the map, which is this light pink color. Then you have the Downtown Edge 1, which is on the west side of downtown, the salmon pink color. You have the darker red color, which is the Downtown Edge 2. You have the purple color, which is a very small district, which is called the Transition District. Then you have the Mixed Use District, which is a hot pink color here. Then you have the Mixed Use 1 District, which is this pink color. Then you have something called as the RM1/Mixed Residential District, which is this orange color. Then you have the RM2 Multiple Family Residential District, which is this district, which has got the crosshatch across it. Then you have the Research Technology District, which is all of this area south of Parkdale where you have Pfizer and all of those sites located, and the north side of South Street. And finally, you have the LI, or the Light Industrial District, which is on the south side of South Street. I will try to summarize each of these districts in brief so that everybody gets an idea of what each one of these districts represents. So the Planning Commission, when you make your recommendation to City Council, get a comprehensive picture of each of these districts. I will first start with the RM1 district, because this district has not had a public hearing before you previously. So the RM1 district currently exists in your zoning ordinance. It's just called Multiple Family 1 Residential District. We are going to be calling it, as recommended by your master plan adopted in 2022, as RM1/Mixed Residential District. This district basically will allow for multiple family residential buildings, but their design profile is going to be no different than most single family residential homes. The maximum permitted building height is 2.5 stories, which is the same as is permitted in the R1, R2 district. Just like any single family district, the maximum permitted number of stories is the same in the RM1 district, mixed residential. The permitted building height is 30 feet. So it's 30 feet or 2.5 stories. That's the maximum permitted for RM1, single family residential district. This district also will now have architectural design guidelines in it, when the current ordinance does not have any specific design guidelines for this district at all. This RM1 is where you see all of this orange color, the light orange color located over here. And two of the most important parcels that you are seeing change to RM1 mixed residential are these two parcels, the Solaronics parcel and the Dillman and Upton's parcel. I know these two are of specific attention to the residents who are located in this area. Right now, this parcel was approved for development. This parcel is zoned industrial. In your 2022 master plan, this parcel was recommended for RT, which is two-family dwelling. Based on the existing pattern of development, RT is not an appropriate zoning for this development. Hence, the recommendation was for RM1 mixed residential development. There was a question raised, if this changes from RT to RM1 mixed residential, how does the density of development on the parcel change? So the Dillman and Upton's parcel is approximately 2.88 acres. It is a very odd shaped parcel because it's got frontage entirely on the trail, and then it has got frontage on the street. So by the time you take out the green belts that are required under the new ordinance provisions along a public right-of-way, by the time you take out the green belts that are required along a trail, the amount of developable area on this parcel is going to be really limited. Based upon that, the number of units that can possibly fit onto this parcel, a maximum under both the RT and the RM1, will nearly be the same. It will be anywhere from 30 to 38 to 40 units. That's the maximum. 30 to 40 units is the maximum that will fit. If you make it a straight RT duplex, you can get a maximum of 39 units. If you make it into an RM1 mixed residential of 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units, you can get 38 units. So we ran the numbers just so you would know that whether it is RT or whether it is RM1, the density of development on that parcel will remain approximately the same. However, the profile of the buildings will be significantly lesser in case of RM1 because there are more design limitations and restrictions for RM1. In case of RM1, as I mentioned, the proposed building height that is recommended, I'm sorry, I stand corrected. RM1's maximum permitted building height is 30 feet. It's 30 feet, 2.5 stories. Whereas in RT, it is 35 feet, 2.5 stories. So the building height is lesser in an RM1 mixed residential district. So that is the main key feature of the RM1 mixed residential district. The second district is the RM2 multiple family district. This is a district that is currently in your zoning ordinance. It mainly encompasses the areas that already have apartment complexes in the city. It is this whole area, it is already fully developed, and it includes all these areas which are already approved for development. So at this time, most of the parcels that are RM2 designated in the future land use plan map are already either approved for development or have already been developed a while ago. The big difference is the current RM2 regulations in the zoning ordinance allow for a maximum building height of 8 stories or 100 feet. The Planning Commission dropped it to 6 stories or a maximum height of 80 feet. So they basically reduced the profile of the buildings in this area and they limited the height. As in the case of RM1, there are also going to be design guidelines for RM2. The third district that's up for public hearing is the Research Technology District. So the Research Technology District basically replaces the RP or the Research Park District, which currently only encompasses all of Pfizer and all of the pharmaceutical companies that are located in this area. That district is now being extended to this area. This area north of South Street currently is zoned I2, or our heaviest industrial district. Since it abuts the Clinton River Trail, the master plan envisions this area not for industrial uses, but it envisions this for uses that would be more of research technology-based uses. With buildings, it is hoped that these are lots of smaller little parcels. It is hoped that these parcels will actually be consolidated for 1 or 2 developments where the new buildings are constructed and set in a campus-like setting, which will take advantage of the fact that it's next to the Clinton River Trail and you'll have walking pathways and basically make it into an amenity rather than just make it into small industrial little parcels, which is basically a detriment to the natural feature that it is placed right next to. The fourth district that we are going to talk about is the LI or Light Industrial District. This is basically the last contiguous section of industrial uses that will be left in the city. The only other place where you would have all the auto bump shops, this is where all of the other uses are. Whatever industrial uses you have currently in the city are mostly located in this area and they will continue to remain in this area. There is no further expansion of industrial uses, so they are going to remain in this area. Moving on from the multiple family and the research tech and the light industrial district, we go to the core downtown. This is the CBD or the Central Business District. The Central Business District currently exists in our zoning ordinance. There are a lot of uses allowed in our Central Business District. Some of those uses that are in there, they really need to be revisited. A couple of commissioners had sent me notes asking me, why are these uses even in there? And I have no idea when that ordinance was drafted, why those uses were put in, but that is a very good question. Some of those uses need to come out. Thankfully, we don't have those uses anywhere in the downtown, and it's hoped they never come there. But those uses don't necessarily belong in that area. One of the examples is that our Central Business District allows for sexually oriented businesses. Have no idea why it went in there in the first place, but I think it belongs elsewhere, not in the CBD. Similarly, there are some other uses that currently exist in the downtown, even though they are not permitted, such as the tire shop. Those uses are existing legal non-conforming uses. So they are protected under state law, which basically means as long as the use is operated, it can continue to operate. But the moment the use ceases operation, and if it stops operating for 365 days, the use loses its non-conformity protection, and any other use that goes into the site now has to conform to the Central Business District requirements itself. That CBD district regulations really needs to be cleaned up, but it is going to be an exhaustive undertaking. So what we have done at this time is just clean up some of the development standards because a discussion of the actual use profile of all the uses that are permitted in the CBD will require an in-depth work on the part of the Planning Commission. And that would also tie into one of the most important concerns the Planning Commission has previously identified, Section 2118. Section 2118 is a section that is not placed under the CBD. It is under the general supplemental regulations elsewhere in the ordinance that governs what the buildings in the Central Business District needs to look like. It basically provides architectural guidelines, but the architectural guidelines are not very clear. So when we have architectural guidelines provided for a district, they need to be clear in terms of what building materials are acceptable, what are not acceptable, what kind of roof profiles, what kind of window details, what kind of historic architectural details, what are the architectural elements that would make historic downtown what it is today, and what, if sites are redeveloped, the city would like to see. Currently, the way Section 2118 is written, that is not what it is trying to do. So 2118 also needs to be rewritten in its entirety, and that is something that we intend to undertake right after all these districts have gone through, because Section 2118 is referred to not just for the Central Business District, it is referred to for the Downtown Edge 1, Downtown Edge 2, the transition, and the mixed-use districts also. So it is a very important district where the architectural guidelines need to be clear. So we will be tackling it in the near future. I know several commissioners were very concerned about it, so it will be coming back to you in the near future. Moving from the Central Business District, immediately to the west of the Central Business District, based on the master plan, a new district is being created, which is called the Downtown Edge 1. So now the Downtown Edge 1 is an extension of the downtown, but it is a low-profile district. This district recognizes the fact that you have single-family residential neighborhoods to the west. So any uses along this block and in this area needs to be of a low-key nature. It cannot be something that would generate high volumes of traffic or something that would be a source of nuisance to the single-family residential neighborhoods. So this is the Downtown Edge 1. If you notice, the Downtown Edge 1 is broken up just by a smaller district that is called T, or the Transition District. The reason the Transition District was put into place is immediately to the west of Pine Street, we actually have single-family residential homes. So it was essential that the design elements for these two blocks could not be the same as the design elements for all of these properties. So the design elements and the development standards for these two blocks were different, hence a new district had to be carved out called Transition. And when I say new development standards, any project that is built on these properties have to access Walnut. They're not allowed to put their access onto Pine Street because we do not want any traffic from these non-residential developments to come out onto a residential street and impact the residents who live on the street. So there are design guidelines built onto these properties so that the impact, if any, on the residential homes to the west is minimized to the extent feasible. This is once again a new district, the Transition District. Moving to the other side of Main Street, the darker red color is something called the Downtown Edge 2 District. Now, the Downtown Edge 2 District is significantly different than the Edge 1 District because the areas that allow for the Edge 2 District take into account the topography of the property. These are areas where taller buildings are permitted because on the east side of Main, the property slopes away, it slopes down, as a result of which taller buildings can be accommodated. One of the key features of both the Downtown Edge 1, Edge 2, and the Transition District is any building or structure that is built in these areas must submit something called a line of sight diagram. A line of sight diagram basically means if a building is constructed on any one of these parcels, somebody standing on the sidewalk on Main Street, if they would tend to look west or if they turn to look east, they should not be able to see this building. No building constructed in either of these blocks or on the other sides of Main Street can overwhelm the historic core downtown buildings. So the line of sight diagram is basically a north-south and an east-west cross-section that a developer has to submit in order to demonstrate that any building that they construct will not overwhelm or detract from the integrity of Rochester's core historic downtown itself. So that is one of the key developmental standards that are required for the downtown H2 district. Moving on from the downtown H2 district, we go to two different types of mixed-use district. Now, we have one mixed-use district is this pink shade, and the other mixed-use district is a distinct shade of pink. Now, the basic definition of a mixed-use district is the same. It envisions at a street level having pedestrian-based uses such as retail use, coffee shops, so on and so forth, and having live workspaces, condos, and residential units above it. But depending upon the location of where these mixed-use parcels are located, if you'll notice, the shading of pink is different in different areas. Once again, the color mimics and is based upon the topography of the area and the location of the area. For instance, mixed-use parcels that are on Main Street are limited to a maximum height of 35 feet or 2.5 stories. That is to ensure that even though they are mixed use in nature, they will still maintain the same height profile of the central business district. So you're not going to have a mixed use building that is way taller than the core downtown buildings itself. But the mixed use buildings that are further to the east, if you go further to the mixed use buildings that are in this area, those buildings will be much taller. And even for those buildings, they will have to submit line of sight diagrams to actually show how the buildings would appear. The reason why some of these buildings are permitted taller heights is when the properties tend to slope down from Main Street. If you allow for really shorter buildings, if you're on top of a street over here, you're going to be looking at rooftop mechanical units of all of the buildings if they're only 2-story buildings and 3-story buildings on properties that are much lower than you. So the intent behind taller buildings is to ensure that the visual line of sight that is maintained does not end up being something that is undesirable. So the height of the buildings is determined based upon the grade and the slopes of the property itself and how they are set forth. Moving on from the mixed-use districts, that basically summarizes all of the 10 districts. From the 10 districts, we went next and created a consolidated and updated, I shall zoom in if my cursor will move to that page. We consolidated and updated schedule of regulations. If you look at the updated schedule of regulation, it cross-references each one of these districts to show you where you need to go in to see what the permitted maximum building height, the setbacks are. In each of these districts, the setbacks and the building heights are defined because we actually reference the line of sight diagrams, the number of stories, where, how many stories, how many feet are permitted depending upon the location and the topography. So this is a summation of the 10 zoning districts that are before the Planning Commission for a public hearing tonight. This map is presented to you merely as a draft for information purposes. So when we present to you a text with 25, 30 pages with different districts, you can look at the map to understand where exactly are these different zoning districts going to fit in, where are they going to be placed. This gives you a comprehensive idea of where it is going to be. So I tried to make years worth of work as concise as I could. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have, or if the members of the public or the residents have any questions, I'm happy to try and clarify that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Vidya. That was very informative as a summary. I'm going to ask you to stand by. We're going to have the public hearing before we have comments from the commission. That way, if necessary, we can respond to what you're asking or what you're commenting about. And I assume most of you are here for this, so we may even have a second session where you can respond to what you hear. That's up in the air at this point. But I'm going to open the public hearing right now at 7:35. So if anyone in the audience would like to speak to this item, ask a question, or make some comments, please come up, state your name, your address, and then give your comments.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Michael Coleman. I'm a resident at 337 Grigg Street, along with my wife Lauren, who's with me tonight, and our two college-age children, one of whom, Alex, decided to spend part of his spring break observing local government in action, which I think is impressive, at least for us. I'm here to speak to the proposed permitted uses for light industrial, raise some concerns and objections, specifically as they relate to property at 326 Albertson. I don't know if it's possible to expand the map so we can kind of take a look at the area that we're looking at.
Lydia, did you hear that request? Can you expand?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm headed right there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was missed in the presentation of light industrial, so I want to make sure that was part of the discussion. My understanding is the proposal is to change that. It is currently residential non-conforming. My understanding is the proposal is to change it to light industrial. That's my understanding. And so based on that, I don't understand how the definition of usage for light industrial would apply to all the districts, including this particular district. As you can see, I live at 337 Griggs, which is directly adjacent. There's about half a dozen residential houses surrounding it, directly across the street from the park and the Pink Creek Trail. It's accessible only via residential streets, Griggs or Albertson. So, as I said, it's currently residential. I don't understand how that could possibly be qualified for light industrial. Specifically, I'm not sure that would make sense to put a sewage disposal plant or a trucking facility or a pet care facility there, which are all permitted under industrial. So, again, I'm confused as to how they could possibly match with a residential neighborhood adjacent to the park. So we believe that so either there's something wrong with the definition of light industrial, since it doesn't apply to all the areas that are included, or perhaps there's a mistake, or there's no reason for that area to be changed from residential to light industrial. And in all the discussions, I've noticed in all the discussions of the paperwork, light industrial, they talk about South Street, and there's been no discussion or inclusion of this, even this evening's presentation. So, just wondering why that has been kind of isolated and left off to the side and not included in the discussions that I've seen so far.
Chairman?
Thank you, Mike. Yes,
I'm not exactly sure what area we're talking about. I know where Albertson is, but is it that heavily,
it's a triangular piece
Yeah,
along the
triangular.
creek.
okay.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, and maybe you can speak to a little bit, because there was a lot of history with that particular property and discussion in previous submittals. So, Vidya, if you can address
Yes.
Mike's question or concern, that'd be appreciated.
I'll try to start addressing it. So I am familiar with 326 Albertson. That is where the Hellrow Corporation is located. It is an existing legal non-conforming industrial use. The parcel is zoned R1 at this time. It is an industrial use. Over the years, I am familiar that a couple of other uses attempted to get in there. However, the parcel is severely contaminated. So it is my understanding the cost of remediation for that parcel simply makes it impossible to be remediated for any residential use. There is a point at which a parcel simply cannot be cleaned up for residential clearance. I have worked with contaminated parcels before, and some parcels are just too dirty to ever be cleaned up and you need to get a certificate for it to actually be used for residential, and some parcels simply cannot get that kind of clearance. The reason why I did not discuss it, it wasn't intentionally just skipped over. When we prepared this map is prepared in accordance with the city's adopted 2022 master plan. In the master plan that was adopted by the city in 2022, this parcel is shown as industrial.
So,
It is my understanding that in 2022, when the city adopted its master plan, This parcel was specifically discussed, and based upon its environmental contamination and the challenges with regard to its existing nonconformity status, it was decided that its land use designation would be changed to match the existing land use. So the decision to change it to industrial was consciously taken when the 2022 master plan was adopted. So at this time, when we prepare the zoning map, we have to prepare the zoning map based upon the future land use plan map that the city adopted in 2022. We cannot change the designation on the parcel to R1. The only time the parcel's designation can be changed is when the city does its 5-year master plan review. It cannot be changed in the middle of the process. So when your consultant Beckett and Rader did your 2022 master plan, I believe they did the community outreach and discussion on this parcel.
No, that's not
I will
correct.
defer to
That's
city
simply-
manager,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Banda. He might be able to provide some more insight on this.
So, Mike, you had a little comment you wanted to make?
That's simply not correct. I think I can speak for pretty much everyone here who's in that neighborhood.
When you say what's not correct?
There was no outreach. The first time we were allowed, the reason we're here tonight is because we just this last week were informed about this change to the zoning.
Okay. Well, I was part of that process,
Right.
and there was outreach. I don't know exactly what the outreach was to you, perhaps.
So we're our house is directly adjacent to
There
the
was
property.
public meetings regarding the master plan process.
Right.
So to, I guess, the ordinance requirements of the city, there was outreach. And maybe it wasn't direct to you, and maybe the city could speak to it, but maybe it wasn't clear enough at the time what was taking place in terms of master planning and visioning for the future.
So you realize we've been here multiple times discussing Hellrow.
Oh, yes.
So do you think it's something that if we had gotten any indication of, we would not have been part of that process or been very much opposed to that? So I don't understand what the process for notification would have been that would have escaped. The very group of people multiple times have come to question the usage of that package or that area.
Yes, Mr. Hauser.
Mr. Banda, can you give us an idea of what the outreach would have been? Like, what form would that have taken?
We didn't go through, we didn't ask for rezoning yet. We were doing a master plan. So you have a community meeting to talk about every parcel in the city, not specific parcels. This has been on the map since 2022. Special exception. We talked about we were going to get rid of all special exception uses. If you remember, Mr. Bavacqua was pushing that. That got reversed. Beckett and Rader simply made that parcel reflect what's being used there now. The owners, the Russells, came in, were very adamant about, if you leave it residential, I can keep doing what I'm doing forever, but what's the difference? Either way. With the special
What's the-
exception, sir?
Excuse me, Mike.
I'm sorry.
So that's the process it went through. So it's been on there for 3 years.
Is there any type of requirement that the city has to maybe like send a letter to adjacent properties? So that doesn't exist. Can you explain why?
Yeah, you can
Vinny,
explain
do you
that.
mind?
So this was, I can explain what the master plan process was. We were in the consultants who did this, so I can explain as a consultant how typically a master plan process works. So when a public engagement session is done, it is not done for individual neighborhoods. It is not done for individual areas. The city would have sent out emails. There would have been posts on the city's website asking for multiple public outreach sessions. There would have been city design charrettes, or there would have been gatherings in maybe the community house or other places. I don't know where it was held, but there would have been open houses where the entire maps of the whole city would have been put forth. And the city's planning consultants at the time, Beckett and Rader, would have been available to discuss every neighborhood and every parcel. A citywide master plan does not go neighborhood by neighborhood, parcel by parcel. It is the whole city is discussed as an open house, multiple open houses. They are advertised on the city's webpage. They are posted on the city's website. And generally, this is not an individual rezoning. If an individual rezoning takes place, every parcel within 300 feet has to get a written notification under state law. But for a master plan, it is a citywide outreach that is just done on the web page and advertising, general advertising, where all residents who are interested can come and offer any and every of their comments. Individual properties are not specifically notified. There is no individual notification during the master plan process.
So if the original master plan had it as residential, and someone approached the commission here and asked to change it to light industrial, and went through the commission and through city council, should there have been notification for what the planning commission was doing at that time?
No, the master plan, the first master plan was done 2014, and then when it was revisited and redone in 2022, no, you don't need, they weren't rezoning it. When one master plan's future land use map is changed in the next master plan revisit, they're not rezoning it. They're changing one future land use plan map to another future land use plan map. It's not a rezoning process. So no, there is no notification required. That property owner must have come to those public engagement sessions and made their concerns known, and so that particular property got addressed at the time. So there is no—
But that process was not communicated.
If this master plan goes, the next master plan revisit will be in 2027. Since it was adopted in 2022, the 5-year revisit is in 2027. In 2027, once again, the same general public outreach will be done. Anybody who's got any concern, they can come and they can individually pick and say, I actually want to discuss this particular parcel. And that property owner can come in and talk. I want to see, what's going on. This little commercial parcel is behind me. Would I be better suited as an office blue next to me? Would I be better suited as this? They are more than within their rights to come and discuss it at this time. And when they discuss it, no notification will be sent to their neighbors, because it is an open house for every citizen to come in and talk and discuss it. And when the master plan is adopted, when the full future land use plan map is done and the entire draft is done, the entire master plan would have been presented at a public hearing at your planning commission. It would have been distributed to the entire community on your website for 63 days, and then it would have gone to your city council. There would have been another public hearing before its adoption. So it would have been out there for a few months before it actually got adopted for everybody to see.
But my understanding is that the Russells came to the commission and asked for the change, although it's not, the minutes are basically they said that they came to discuss things, and then following the comments, commissioners discussed this and decided that to change it to light industrial. So that's part of the process?
Yes, if the property owner came to a public meeting and discussed it, and it was discussed at a public meeting, that is part of the master plan discussion process.
So you can change the zoning through that process?
The zoning is not changed. This is the future land use plan map. This is not the zoning. The future land use plan is a policy document. The zoning on that property is still R1.
So it is R1?
Yes.
It is considered R1?
It is still R1. So I'm sorry, I didn't get your last name. I'll just call you Michael.
Michael, that's—
So Michael, yes. So tonight's hearing, the property will remain R1. I want to clarify to you, it will remain R1. It is not changing R1. Tonight, whatever action that is being taken, the Planning Commission is not going to be changing the Hellrow property to industrial. That's not taking place tonight. That will come later. So there will be another public hearing when this entire map will come for a public hearing, and that is the time when you can come back and you can offer your comments on that particular property. You can come, and at that time you can make your concerns known.
So there's no legal—
The zoning is not changing at this time. At this time, it's remaining R1.
Could you repeat that?
Are there any legal implications for it being in the master plan now as light industrial? Can they use that as the basis to make changes, sell it as light industrial?
No,
So—
it remains R1.
So it
right
doesn't
now.
mean, so until the zoning changes?
If it changes, that would be the time where that kind of question could come up.
Okay.
And I just wanted to state, when we went through that process, you may not have seen that there was a public meeting, but there were meetings, and a lot of them were online. They weren't necessarily like we're sitting here today.
Right,
Some were, but some were online as well.
okay. There's been a lot of confusion amongst the neighborhoods and our household, what exactly it does mean that it is now, because there were some other comments about other parcels and other areas where it being in the master plan had some implications about the usage of the properties for the non-conforming use.
Yeah, so there's a difference between the land use plan and the zoning map.
Okay.
Very different. And this is a perfect case to talk about. It's land use is industrial, the zoning is residential. Very different things.
Okay, so there's nothing that they can do currently that will be.
So currently, it is a non-conforming industrial use.
No.
It can remain as long as they continue operating. They cannot change the use or anything. But the future land use plan map does show it as industrial, and this future land use plan map was adopted in 2022. So if they choose to, they can seek to rezone it to industrial. They would be within their rights to seek a rezoning. They're not seeking it, but if they want to, they can apply for a rezoning.
Mr.
Just in video, just so everyone in the public understands, so if that scenario happened, if the owners of that property sought to have it rezoned to industrial, that's when the letters would be generated to all the adjacent property owners and every.
Absolutely.
Right, and every adjacent property owner would receive the notice that there's a ask to have a change in the zoning, and then that would afford everyone who received one of those letters, or maybe people who didn't get a letter, who still had an interest, could come up and talk about their position. And that has not yet
Correct.
happened,
Every
right?
property owner within 300 feet of the subject property's boundary lines will get a written notice in the mail.
There you go.
NVIDIA, it's fair to say that just because it's in the master plan as a land use, there is no automatic rezoning to that future land use if it would be sought. There is no guarantee that a request to rezone to light industrial would happen. It would go through the process of scrutiny.
There are standards in the zoning ordinance for review of a request for rezoning. Every request for rezoning will have to go through evaluation of those standards. There is an application, there is a process, there is standards for review. So every application will have to go through that.
So,
There will be a public hearing, they'll have to go through that.
so when you say evaluation and review, and I want to make it clear for Mike, because I think he needs to know when he walks away that this isn't going to be automatic if there is a request in the future. My understanding is just because it's a land use now on the master plan, when someone comes to request a rezoning to that use, it's not automatic. It's evaluated, reviewed, and a decision's made.
Right, the recommendation is made by the planning commission and the city council renders the final decision.
Mike, does that help you feel a little more comfortable with where you are right now with this? Is a zoned R1, land use, light industrial? And it's not automatic that it can be redistricted to light industrial?
Redistrict, and there's nothing that it being in the master plan as that use would allow them to do something different with it prior to it being categorized that way, in terms of usage or selling or.
It would have to stay in the same use. And correct me if I'm wrong, that we went through a number of plan reviews where they sought to make some changes in terms of its use,
Yeah.
but we kept it within the use that it is now.
Right, or they withdrew the, right, it was,
Yeah.
yeah. That does help quite a bit. I just have one, because again, I'm spending a lot of time with this. Okay. So my understanding is that the light industrial is now basically what used to be L1.
I1, correct.
I1, sorry, with slight modification. The only modification, there was what basically reduced everything. The only thing is they added the usage for pet care and pet. I'm wondering what the rationale was for adding this one specific item to the usage.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. Could you repeat it?
He asked, there was a use added to the I-1, which included pet care, and wanted to understand the rationale of that being added. And I don't recall specifically.
The reason might be because right now we have two industrial districts in our zoning ordinance, I1 and I2. our new zoning ordinance is going to have only one industrial district, LI. We're going to have a single industrial district called LI. I'm going to scroll this map. This is still a draft map, as I keep repeating. So we are going to have a single industrial district called LI. So we have a pet care place in one area. We are trying not to make the use non-conforming. There is an existing legal use. If we don't put pet care in there, it's going to make an existing legal use non-conforming. We are trying to avoid making something that is conforming non-conforming. So that is the reason for adding a few uses to prevent creation of new non-conformities. When a use was legally established under the I2 district, and now we are consolidating and making it a single LI district, we are just adding a use profile in so that we are not making it non-conforming. And we have to provide for uses somewhere in our zoning ordinance. We don't allow for those kind of pet care places anywhere else in our zoning ordinance except the industrial district. We had to add it into the LI. Without it, it wouldn't be there anywhere. So that's why.
So there is an existing pet care in that area?
On South Street.
On South, yes, there is one. We don't want to make them non-conforming because I believe they were established legally with approvals when they built. So if we take it out, they will end up becoming non-conforming.
Mike, is there anything further from you?
I don't think so.
Okay, I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, I appreciate the
We
clarification.
did entertain
There's been a
that.
lot- Obviously, it's a extremely important issue to a lot of people. In this room.
Absolutely, we want to give you the
And
proper
there was
time to
A lot of
ask.
confusion, and again, I understand the process is public and it is published, but sometimes it takes a little bit of working, digging, and interpretation of the things that are out there, and it's not always clear the order in which things happened, how they happened, and what the consequences of these designations are, so it's helpful to have that clarification. I'm assuming if there is if I can ask, do we know whether there is an intention that there will be pursuit of rezoning at this point? Is that anticipated, or does anyone know?
I know of nothing. That would happen through administration first, but Mr. Manager's indicating no.
Okay, so if not, I won't see you again for a while, but if so, we'll be back soon.
2 years.
We appreciate you being here tonight, Mike, and your wife as well. Thank you, Lauren.
Appreciate you.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, come on up.
Hi, my name is Margaret Mountain, and I live at 160 Albertson.
Margaret, can you repeat your last name again?
Mountain,
Mountain, okay,
just
thank
like
you.
the hills. Yeah. Just a comment, it just came to my mind when Vidya was talking about the L1 and the need to not have non-conforming. And I understand that, because you want to try to keep it simple. But I just think, kind of maybe as a matter of record, that really underlines why it's important not to have these little isolated L things. Because you're saying it's not, it could be any of the things that are in this great big area. So things that would make sense there, like the dog or dog park or whatever it is gonna be, if you make it all the same, then if you have these little isolated things, you could introduce all sorts of stuff there that was not part of the real plan, if you know what I mean. So I just think it's important to recognize that as you, with the goal of that consistency and not having non-conforming, it even underlines more importantly that you can't have these little isolated areas, because you're really opening up a huge volume of potential businesses that could go in there.
Thank you, Margaret. We appreciate your perspective there. Others? Yes, ma'am, if you could come up.
I'm Linda Gamage, and I live at 333 Griggs. and
Linda, can you repeat your last name again?
Linda Gamage, Gamage. And we've been before the Planning Commission several times about the Hellrow property. And I am very concerned about this changed definition of L1, because it seems to allow it seems to introduce allowing many things to that property that is directly adjacent to our homes, would devalue our property if some of those usages moved in. And it just appears as if this is the intent moving forward for that piece of property. I'm very upset that the master plan that was presented, and I did go to many public hearings for that, I participated in the steering committee for the master plan, and never until like 2 meetings before it was approved by city council, which was years after the steering finished, was that ever switched from residential on the map that I ever saw. So while I understand that map, we did have 63 days or whatever to review it, it was never presented in this manner before, other than just one person coming before this planning commission and asking for a change. So my concern is about the definition, including several things that would not be appropriate for that parcel directly behind our home. I think that it should remain non-conforming, and if there's also a statement in the last meeting minutes, that, oh, I did bring it up. In the last meeting minutes, that by the city attorney, I believe, that you don't have to wait 5 years for changes to the master plan. And if that is in fact accurate, you may see our neighborhood come back and request that future land use to revert to residential non-conforming, because that is extremely important to us, to not have all of these L1 definitions that are up for discussion tonight to be present directly behind our homes. Thank you for letting me speak, and thank you for all of the work you do, because it is very important to our community.
Thank you, Linda. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Reese. I live on 757 Ludlow. And we talked a little bit about community outreach, and I just want to say, specifically for Mr. Hauser, thank you very much for the detail you've provided. I know we have another resident off of Ludlow that's part of the Planning Commission, but I really appreciate that. And I just have a few simple questions here. So when it comes to community outreach, the gentleman was speaking about the industrial property adjacent to his house. And letters will be sent out to the properties nearby, right, if they want to have public comment and so on. Is there any function, I don't know if it crosses any kind of legal lines, where residents could sign up for push notifications regarding agenda items or topics that are going to be discussed? And for this reason, I think a lot of people are very busy. And for me to actually go to the website to see what's going on can sometimes be, you have to think about it and you have to go there. But if we were able to receive a push notification, that'd be fantastic. It's got the agenda, when the meeting, topics that will be discussed. Just a thought that I have.
There is currently, you can request planning commission as well as city council. You can get agenda and full packet.
Maybe I didn't sign up for it. I know I get other communications from the city, so maybe that's something different.
If you check with the city, I'm sure they can get you hooked into that.
And specifically public hearings as well.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. That's good. And the other thing I was going to ask is, some of these contaminated properties that are there, is there any state or federal grant money that could be utilized to clean some of that stuff up?
There are things that the city has participated in, help some of the properties advance in their use, and maybe Mr. Manager would address that.
Normally, yes, Eric, that's true. We've got three $1 million loan, $1 million loan back for the city, 3 $1 million grants, so they could ask for it, but normally it's not for small parcels, it's for larger parcels that have a bigger impact. So it's up to the state's Lust Fund, it's called, to do that. So the petitioner that owns the property can certainly reach out to that. They did 3 years ago, and they were turned down. It didn't meet the threshold for Eagle at that time. So we got it for Mosherry's property, we've got it for Rewald's property, and we've got it for Tony Randazzo's property, and right now they're looking at another $1 million for the Solaronics piece. So it's possible, but very rare a city gets more than one, and we've got 3 already, but they could certainly reach out for that.
Okay. Yeah. And Solaronics, where does that stand right now? Maybe that's not, I don't know if we can talk about that. I'm just kind of curious. All right. Super. Yeah, those are my only questions.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Others? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Planning Commission. My name is John Gaber, and I'm an attorney. I actually represent the owners of 322 to 326 Albertson. And I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Russells, Kim and Jeff. Unfortunately, they're not able to be here tonight. They're on a pre-planned engagement out of town, so they send their apologies, and that's the only reason I'm here tonight instead of them. But essentially, as was spoken, numerous times here, in 2022, whoops, I think I did that. 2022, obviously the master plan was updated, and the designation for this property was changed. The Russells made a presentation to this board, went through a slide presentation, explained the history of this site, explained the environmental contamination and such. And I understand that a lot of the board members now, or the planning commissioners, are new and weren't here during that master plan process. So when the zoning map comes up for amendment, at that point in time in that meeting, we would request that the Russells have the opportunity to make a similar presentation to explain their position. I mean, the neighbors, obviously are going to explain their position and articulate it very well. And the Russells would just like the opportunity to do that at that point in time. So that's the request, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I appreciate being here tonight.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments in the audience? Yes, ma'am, if you come on up.
Hello, my name is Jane Pitchford. I've lived at 177 Albertson for the last 50 years. And I came tonight in support of my neighbors as well, as I don't feel that the Hellrow property should be zoned light commercial or light industrial. And I feel like it's to our benefit that we keep it as the residential non-conforming, so that if they do make a change of the same or greater usage, it would come to the Planning Commission, to you, and it would give us someone who could make a good decision, not only for us, but for the community as well. So I think that's really why I came. But I did have a secondary question. And I hate to admit this, but I looked at the master plan for the first time a few days ago. And I don't know if everybody in Rochester lives their life that way, but we all probably should look at it. Because when I looked at it, the map, that was the map of the future map one, not that one. My property, I have 2 lots. My property was listed as R2, which was a huge surprise, and I'm wondering what that means.
If it's zoned R2, that's just residential.
Pardon me?
It's not multiple families, just, there's R1, 2, 3, 4, 5 based on lot widths, so it's just single family residential. On Albertson, unless it's RT, that's different, but I don't know which one's yours.
In
Do you have that
R12,
map there? You could pull it up and,
That's about the zoning map.
You're 177?
yes.
It's on Albertson.
Mm-hmm. Would you have that map there? I think I saw it when the meeting first started.
I see.
Can she hear me?
No, I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I cannot zoom in and see addresses on the map that's on the screen. This is a zoning map, so I cannot see addresses on this. But if you tell me where on Albertson, this is the Hellrow property. Are you on the same street?
I'm on Albertson, the last 2 lots.
Closer to Main Street or
No,
To the south.
closer to Hellrose.
south? Oh, the last 2?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so those 2 are, the color in them is,
They were orange.
Oh, yeah, you have the.
they are RT, 2 family.
Yeah, so you're zoned
Why?
RT because your property was unique and it's zoned RT. or is it future land use RT? We'd have to,
Is that something that you guys can clarify after this meeting? So, Jane, if you don't mind, that's certainly a good thing for you to find out the detail on, but it's certainly not pertinent to the discussion. And I don't want to cut
Sure.
you short at all, but I want to make sure that we stay on subject.
All right, could I ask one quick question about that?
Absolutely.
If I sold it, can I sell it as R1?
yes, well, not, as you could, if you give us a second, we have to find out what the zoning is, forget the future land use plan. If it's zoned RT, you can sell it as one family detached, subject to the R1 district or RT two families. You got the best of both worlds, but I need to know what the zoning is on it, and I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
We'll find it.
Thank you, Jane. I appreciate your questions. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address this particular subject? There's nothing there. So, Rose, is there anybody online that would like to speak?
I do not see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay.
I can clarify.
Yes, Mr. Manager?
So it is zoned right now, what's this one, R1. It is zoned Yep, it's zoned R1, but if I remember right, Vinny, if you go back to the future land use plan, I think that, I looked this up with Jeremy earlier this week, it's zoned, the future land use map, put it to a RT.
RT.
Yeah, because of Beckett Rader, when they did their study, it's like that property, in order to best use it, you should have the option of a duplex or one, so you could have one or two. Most people can't have that, so that's a good thing for you, so. It's zoned right now, single family, right?
Yes, it is zoned single family right now, and in the master plan, it is designated as RT two family. But it can be sold and used for building single family homes or duplexes. It can be used for either purpose.
Okay, with no one online and the audience seeming satisfied, I'm going to close the public hearing at 8:12 and bring it back to the commission. And we've heard a couple questions here. Some of it were answered in real time. There may be some questions from the commissioners or clarifications you'd like to add, or go back to the summary and discussion that Vidya provided, as well as what you've done on your own in terms of looking at the package. So I'll open it up to the commission for discussion or questions. Mr. Hauser.
I just want to make sure that the city, and all of us frankly, and the city planner conveys to the public the distinction between the zoning map and then the future land use map. I think that's critical because it's clear, I think even from some of us sometimes, there can be some confusion between those two designations. And it's imperative that we make certain that when we're conveying these things to the public, when we convey this to the residents, that they understand exactly what's going on. Because I can understand it could create some anxiety, it could create some uncertainty, and I think we owe it to everyone out there in the public to be very clear about what we're doing. So I know we will, but I would just emphasize moving forward, we should be very diligent in making certain we distinguish between what the zoning map is and then what a future land use map is and the distinction between those two.
Thank you, Commissioner Hauser. Commissioner Clauser?
Yeah, I have a couple questions going back to the zoning ordinance language video that you provided. First, addressing the comments, I appreciate everyone's comments because I also marked notes on the zoning map specific to those properties at Griggs and Albertson, and then Woodward and Ludlow and the light industrial, and also have concerns and questions about those. But it's my understanding, and I think the room addressed it, but it's my understanding that we're gonna get to the zoning map in the future, right? That's not today's conversation. So appreciate the comments, appreciate that we'll be able to continue talking about that because I also have questions and concerns. But then getting to the language specifically, I do have a couple clarifying questions for you, Vidya. RM2, the multifamily residential. When you go to the section about conditional uses, in the language that we have today, there are two more provisions under section 4 that are not in what you have provided, and I'm wondering if it's oversight or if there's reasoning for them. They were, if you're looking at our current zoning, E and F were left out, and E is in regards to complying with RM2 setback requirements, and I think that's because it's addressed somewhere else. And the second one, the mixed use is letter F, and that is in regards to how we calculate and compute the parking requirement. And so that was one I was hoping you could address specifically, is why we took that one out.
I am, just 1 second, please. I'm scrolling to the RM2. The question is regarding the RM2 district, correct?
Yep, and things that are missing, so they're not in what you provided us. They were in our original zone. They're in our current zoning, I should say, and they were not put in.
So I'm looking at the packet that is submitted. Would you please tell me again what is missing? I had to scroll to the packet. So which page? I'm going to share my screen.
Sure.
I am in RM2.
Yep, and if you go to the conditional use section for RM2.
Okay, I'm in conditional uses, okay.
It's, if you're looking at what you sent us, it's in section 903-4, and
okay,
in what you provide, it goes to letter G, but in our current zoning,
Right.
it goes to letter I. So there are 2 letters that were omitted, and I'm wondering if you could provide context for why they're omitted. And one specifically, the one on how we calculate parking, is what I'm looking at. Does that make sense, Vidya?
Yes, so the reason why H was removed is because in RM2, as I mentioned, Commissioner Krause, we changed the height requirement of the building. The current ordinance says the size and scale of development, specifically the number of stories, shall be at the discretion of the Planning Commission. Instead of leaving it open-ended like that, 8 stories and 100 feet, which is what the current ordinance does. If you recollect, I summarized that we dropped it down to 6, no more than 6 stories and 80 feet. So we took that out to avoid any putting the Planning Commission in a situation where somebody has to argue about wanting a taller building. We took out that ambiguity and said, this is the absolute max ceiling. You cannot go any taller than that. That is why item H got eliminated. And we removed item I for mixed residential and office developments because RM2 is no longer going to be mixed residential because RM1 is going to be mixed residential. RM2 is strictly going to be multiple family residential. So those 2 were no longer relevant to multiple family residential, so we removed those 2 subsections.
That makes sense, Vidya. The other one that's missing is the mixed-use developments. It says the number of parking spaces required for the combined total of residential and office use is computed separately. So it talks about how we compute the parking requirements, but that's no longer in the.
Yes, so the reason why we removed it is when many of these original ordinances were written, Commissioner, we have realized that the ordinances that were written previously, they all resulted in large areas of impervious surface. You just have to look at today's Myers and Kroger's and all of these big box retail to just see the vast expanses of asphalt. That is a result of the parking standards that are in most zoning ordinances. So the current recommendation by the Institute of Traffic Engineers and all is to consolidate parking requirements to not require vast amounts of parking. You consolidate parking to require minimum because the more amount of impervious surface we have, the more stormwater runoff, the more flooding we see. All the stormwater flooding problems that we recently see is exacerbated by the fact that we have so much impervious surface around us. So we did not want to put in any hard requirements where it immediately says all of the parking shall be additive. You shall provide for each individual use. If an applicant can demonstrate to us that the parking need is met, we wanted to give the Planning Commission some flexibility in actually seeing hard data. I know the Planning Commission, as was discussed on a recent project, you wanted to see data. You wanted to make your decision based on data. We wanted to allow you to have the flexibility rather than have the ordinance dictate hardcore that this is what the parking shall be without allowing you the benefit of having data to make that determination.
Okay, I think that helps, and it probably answers my next questions too, but for the downtown edge 1 district, getting to parking again,
Okay.
in the intent section,
Okay, I will scroll to, okay.
in between, there's a sentence in there that I'm hoping you can explain, Vidya, is in between the first paragraph and the last paragraph there, it again talks about parking, but I'm not really sure what it's saying, and I'm just wondering if you can help clarify that one or explain it.
or is that edge one?
So
or
it says
edge
the
two?
district
Edge one.
discourages the development of separate off-street parking facilities for each individual use and encourages the development of off-street parking facilities designed to accommodate the needs of several individual uses. Basically, our downtown edge uses are right off Main Street. We are encouraging that buildings that are built over here take advantage of our existing public lots, take advantage of existing parking decks, and use the spaces that are already there rather than create more surface lots. Our downtown has got finite space. There isn't room for too many more buildings. We would rather have proper developments than have more and more striped parking all over whatever limited area we have.
That makes sense, and that helps, because then my next question was on the very last part of that. There's a number 8 in there in regards to parking. It was the same thing. It says use of public parking decks is encouraged.
Yes.
Neither one of those sentences or that section are in the downtown edge 2 or the transition zone. So I just was trying to understand, but it sounds like they're included in this one because in this section, or this zone, downtown edge 1, we want to encourage the use of public parking spaces and spaces already available. Am I following?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. That helps clarify why they're different. Thank you. I think that's it for me.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Other-
would you
Commissioner
indulge?
Bachmann? Yes,
Yeah, a
please.
few more questions for my edification. Just a couple questions on some language changes from the copy we reviewed at the joint meeting with City Council. One is Section 1103 in the CBD.
Okay.
Moved to conditional uses, whereas before it was special exception uses. That seemed clerical because I think the other zones were all conditional. And we didn't discuss it at all at the joint meeting, so this must be a historic thing before my time. So I'm wondering if you could, because the definitions seem almost, substantially similar to me. I'm wondering what the difference is and the implications of changing to conditional use versus special exception use.
So the reason why we changed it to special exception use, I hope I consistently changed it. I made sure to proofread the entire document to make sure all references to special exception are now changed to conditional land uses. Rochester has a unique tool called special projects. The problem is special projects is so close in terminology to special exception. It's quite often being interchangeably used, and they are totally not the same thing at all. They are two completely different concepts. Special projects is a completely unique tool to just Rochester. It is a development tool that provides flexibility, whereas special exception is similar to a tool that is there in every other municipality zoning ordinance. It's actually called as special land use or conditional land use. I don't know why Rochester has always called it special exception, but it has caused a lot of confusion before. So I thought when we are redoing all the zoning districts, this is the time to provide some clarity. So we decided to remove special exception and now call it conditional uses so people don't get mixed up between special exception and special projects. Now, they'll be two completely different terms.
Thank you. That helps me clarify. And I think you did. I think it's all uniform now. No more reference to special exception use.
If I made a mistake, if I missed it somewhere, please do let me know. I think I searched it multiple times to make sure I didn't miss any references. But
two more quick things, I hope. Just a clarification on, there's a language change also in the CBD regarding lodging, and I think this is part of conditional uses. So it's like, I think that one of the very last aspects, like item 7 or paragraph 7 of conditional uses talks about, previously it said lodging units are not permitted on street levels. And the language changed to rental units, including ancillary support spaces, are not permitted on street levels. I just wanted to understand the impact of that language change.
I'm not sure we changed that language. Let me just double check. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the existing, actually, it's the same language as the existing zoning ordinance, Commissioner Bachmann. We did not change it at all. It's the existing zoning ordinance.
If I could add to that, maybe because it's in existing and in what we're looking at tonight, it says lodging in 2 of the items and rental in 1. that does bring the question to my mind of what's the difference? Why isn't the third item called lodging versus being what it is called rental?
Okay, in some places it's called lodging, some places it is rental. Thank you for pointing that out. I actually need to keep it consistent with the existing ordinance language or make it all consistent. I will review it again and I will make sure the language is consistent. I see what you're pointing out now. Page 8, I don't know why in a couple of places it says lodging and in one it says rental. But this is once again the CBD district's use profile, all of these uses. We would need to sit down and we will go over the planning commission and look at each use by use and see how many of these are actually relevant today and how many of them really don't belong in the CBD anymore and need to be taken out.
And so that's a nice segue to the last question, which is paragraph 5 of conditional uses for the CBD, which is the adult bookstores that you referenced earlier.
Yes.
There's a contradiction that may need to be resolved. I think Attorney Crott had suggested we consider doing that. Under paragraph 5, part B, items 1 and 2 contradict each other. And I don't know if, I'll leave it to the chairman if we want to address that tonight, if it's worth doing.
Item 5A.1 and 2 is what you're referring to?
Right, so more or less, point 1 says no persons under 18 years of age shall be permitted into an adult establishment unless accompanied by a parent. Point 2 says, point 2 basically forbids a minor from.
Okay. So that's item B, not A. So yeah, I see it now.
Oh, did I say A? I apologize, yeah.
I said A,
5B,
but
1
I'm
and
trying
2.
to clarify, it is B.
Yep.
I forwarded that comment to Attorney Crott, Commissioner Buckman, and he agreed that there was an ambiguity and that needed to be corrected. It was contradicting each other. So whichever way Attorney Crott would like to go about it, I'm fine with it. I do think it needs to be corrected. In fact, that whole section probably needs to be shifted elsewhere in the ordinance, possibly. But it's a legal use, so I would defer to the attorney about what's the best way to handle that portion of it.
And as a commission, we'll do the same. Attorney Crott is online.
Yes, good evening. So I think, I know there's a couple other changes that Planning Commission had talked about. It can either be done as part of this process or wait till these zoning districts are put into place and then followed up. Because I think especially the where to put, if it's going to be completely removed from the CBD, then my guess is Planning Commission is going to want to figure out where it should go, and that may take some discussion. I don't think, at least in the time that I've been around, there hasn't been any such uses, so I don't think there's an urgency that if we can use Planning Commission and have more time to figure out where it might go and what regulations, it might be worthwhile to have it as its own agenda item. But it could be part of this as well if Planning Commission chooses. Well, I could go either way on it.
Thank you, Attorney Crott. Any other questions?
No,
Mr.
thank you.
Buckman?
I appreciate those responses.
Any other commissioner questions? Okay, well, we've heard some comments from the public tonight, which we've addressed a lot in conversation. And I think there was a number of things that either Vidya and just now Attorney Crott mentioned. There's some things for us to consider. I'm open to an action the commission would like to take. And I won't suggest what I'm thinking, but I'm looking for your feedback on how you would like to move this forward. We can call it, we've conducted the public hearing, and there's some cleanup or additional information that the planner could provide, or we can take action to move forward. But I'm looking for your thoughts on this.
If I may.
Yes,
I
Commissioner
think
Hauser.
maybe just again, to make sure everything is on, crystal clear, the next action, would you remind the public what that would be?
We would take action to approve this as is, or with some adjustments.
Right.
And then forward it to city council, where they would also have final word on this adoption or amendment. So there's a couple more steps to take place, but we need to get it from here to that point. And I think there's some things that, personally, I like to see some things cleaned up before we take it from here and move it forward, but I'm looking for your input. But if you want to take what I'm just throwing out there, I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, at our joint meeting, we committed to this extremely aggressive,
Yes.
and city council was banking on that, telling the residents. So will this video throw this off by, because remember, it's a month every time, so, which I agree, normally you want everything cleaned up in front of you so you know exactly what you're moving forward. That, I prefer that also, but I want to make sure someone doesn't think we're stalling just because of a couple of minor things, so.
No, so I just need clarification. So I know there were a lot of concerns from the public, but all of the concerns from the public were related to the zoning map, not related to the text of any of the districts we discussed tonight. The concerns regarding the text were to do with CBD, which is a couple of minor corrections which I can immediately get done. And revisiting the CBD is something, as Attorney Kraft said, that is an undertaking. It's not of urgency, so when we are going to redo the whole CBD district, we can do. So at this time, my request would be to the Planning Commission to make a motion to recommend all 10 districts to the City Council. I don't believe any of the comments that we received from the residents tonight asked for a revision to the text. I believe the residents' concerns are more to do with the zoning map itself and the specific residential property and the zoning designation on it. That is not got anything to do with the actual text that was presented to you tonight for the public hearing. So I think these are two completely different matters. So what is on for public hearing tonight really does not require any further change from me for the Planning Commission to act on. So my request would still be consistent for you to please make a recommendation to send this on.
Thank you for that input, and I think there's a couple ways to look at it. It would be schedule is one, which I think is a very low priority. It's important, but low priority. It's really about getting this right. And there aren't a lot of gray areas. I think there were just a few, and I think it's a matter of us being comfortable with moving, let's say, this last item 5B, 1 and 2. Do we say, yeah, we'll deal with that later, or do we want to deal with it now? And then the simple other couple comments that I think Mr. Bachman brought up some good points that are going to require some editing, let's say. No wholesale rework, but if you're comfortable with us going back, and there's more than just that one item in the CBD, item 5B, but there's a couple others that we talked about. I think actually one was on the agenda, like the map itself. Obviously, that is an issue that's separate and independent from what we're doing. But if we're comfortable with taking the 10 amendments, the districts, and moving them forward with these, call it edits, I'm open to that. I'd love to hear a motion or additional comments. Commissioner?
So I think, I don't want to speak for the audience members, but I think I heard them say they were interested in some of the text changes to light industrial. But if I can, I believe the reason there's concerns with light industrial is because where they see light industrial happening in their neighborhood. So if that light industrial area on your map wasn't where it was, I don't know if there would be concerns then to the definition of light industrial. Does that make sense? So this one's hard because we have to, the map is not current zoning, so that's challenging. And so I would say I feel comfortable with the text, but like I said, I agree with some of the comments that there are still questions and concerns for me about the zoning map. I don't know if that helps, Mr. Gass.
I certainly appreciate your perspective.
Helping to clarify.
The first point is really what I was wanting to hear, which is you're comfortable with the text. And if we're, consensus is if we're comfortable, the action would be to move it forward with the understanding that the minor edits would happen through administration. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. Was someone from the audience, I did say we might entertain a second comment from the public. If it's pertinent, please don't repeat anything. If you can, just keep it to your point.
It's Margaret Mountain, 160 Albertson, and I'll try to keep it short. To me, I think what Commissioner Clauser said was exactly right. the concern about the definition. So my question would be, I understand about the zoning and the difference. When we come back to the zoning, is this text open to be discussed? Because you might say, well, okay, if it's light industrial, but now we have to go back and look at the text because this text now has things that weren't allowed before, things that would not be appropriate. So it's just not clear to me if this is approved, if there'll be a door that opens to say, let's look at that definition again, if you want to put it in my neighborhood.
Thank you for that additional information. So to that point, I think, I was gonna ask the planner, that would, if we go through with an amendment all the way through the city council process, any change to that would be another amendment. It's not like we can just make an adjustment when we're doing the zoning map.
We are consolidating the industrial districts into a single industrial district with limited number of industrial uses. So you're correct, Mr. Gasson. I mean, you will have to amend the text of the industrial district to take some uses out. That's the only other way to go about it.
Okay.
We're going to have only one industrial district, not two industrial districts.
It's a possible scenario. If that were the right thing to do, we certainly could do that.
Yeah.
Okay. It's on you guys now. Looking for a motion.
I can make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Bachman?
Just with a little pretext, I'm comfortable, I mean, we've got to come back for 2118, right? That's going to be a pretty significant revision.
Separate item altogether.
So I suppose we could deal with the adult bookstore amendment at that time. So my motion would be to approve the zoning text with clerical changes supported for video throughout the document, and most in particular, section 1103 under the lodging. I think that's section 7, if I'm not mistaken. Is that a reasonable motion?
It is. So the motion is to approve the text with clerical adjustments, in particular 1103 regarding the interuse of word lodging and rental. Did I capture that right, Mr. Rockman?
Yes.
Is there a second to the motion?
Support.
Support by Commissioner Stone. Any questions on the motion?
I guess I'd kind of want to know, you know, if we had say, yes, let's move forward with the language, obviously subject to the edits, and then once the zoning map comes back, are we able to modify that? Yeah, so we're stuck with the text.
We can modify it with another amendment. That's
Exactly. You can
another
modify the
process.
text separately like you're going to do with CBD and some of the other ones.
2118, we're going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's going to be a
There's gonna
forum
be
where we're going to
another
be
change.
doing that anyway.
Right. I'm trying to avoid the situation of kicking the can, but I also appreciate we want to move this forward too.
And just for future, or for historic, we've done this on side entry garages, on many things. So when something comes up that's relevant, we take action, planning commission, either council refers it, a resident will refer it to the planning commission, and then we don't have to wait till the
Goes
master
through the
plan
process.
changes. We can do that right away.
And just to be clear, the motion that we're voting on is strictly to adopt the language that's in the text of these ordinances.
That's correct.
That's it. No zoning changes, no use changes, strictly the language that's in these definitions.
That's it.
Okay.
With the edits we're gonna do, yeah, with clarifications we're going to have.
Okay.
Any other questions on the motion?
Just a clarifying to Mr. Hauser, what is the process for, is it, for the amendments, just what's the process?
Yeah, so it's come a couple different ways. Lately, it's been the zoning board of appeals. It said, we've heard 3 appeals on the same thing. You should look at changing your ordinance to reflect those. So they ask for it to be submitted to the planning commission. We've had residents come in and say, I think you should think about this. We already know we're gonna talk about impervious areas, other things that council's talked about. It can come from council, it can come from a member here. They would say, we would like a study done on that specific thing, and then we go through a public hearing, set a public hearing, do a public hearing, and then that would go to city council again, so there'd be 2 public hearings.
So it does go to city council? too?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
Because we're changing the actual zoning ordinance.
Satisfied?
Yes, thank you.
Roll call.
Gasson.
Yes.
Hauser.
Yes.
Bachman.
Yes.
Klauser.
Yes.
Harden.
Yes.
Kenjuk.
Yes.
Stone.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for your patience in listening to the conversations and also providing your comments. Very much appreciated. Next item tonight is another public hearing for 816 Ludlow, the Rochester Community House, a request for special exception for temporary tent use during construction activities. Is that going to be presented by administration or through video? Okay, video.
Administration?
Administration, thank you.
Yes.
Is that going to be Jeremy or Nick?
For community house, let's talk about why we're here.
Oh, yeah. The community house is coming back for their special exception for the tent. They're asking for again for the seasonal tent, as well as the amendment to the site plan. They got more money from the state that wasn't originally thought that they were going to get, so they came back so they could do that pie in the sky idea instead of this is what we can do with the money we have. So essentially, they built out the basement, they changed a little bit of this facade with one of the dormers, and they kind of just rounded off some corners that were previously not budgeted for.
So, in talking to Alan will come up and make a presentation real quickly, but they need, if they're going to be under construction, they need to use that tent to fulfill the obligations they've already made. So I would purport that if the construction does not take place, you would not want the tent up there this summer because they don't need it, because the rooms are already there, so. But we're hoping this grant comes through for $2 million and we can get started here pretty quickly. And then they would need to get the special exception to extend the tent. The last time we went through this, we said no more tent unless you're under construction. So I would think the same, because it affects Amy and the next door neighbor, right? So, but if we're under construction, we should give them every latitude so that they can fulfill their obligations. And it worked fine. We didn't get really any complaints. They were great about the noise. And the use of that tent. It wasn't to make it more busy there. It was to cover for what they could not use inside the building if we get to start construction. So we're hopeful that any day we hear you got $2 million, City Council committed to an extra $750, I think, to it in the bonds proceeds that go out in May. And if that all gets going and we find our way through it, we'll be under construction. They would need that special exception for the tent to stay up during construction.
Is there an end date on when the tent comes down?
It would have to probably be associated with when they get a C of O, so we wouldn't know exactly until we start. So today, we don't know, but I would think we could put a condition saying the minute you have an internal C of O, you would say the tent goes away. So it could be, we talked about, Alan, like 6 months to up to a year for construction. It would depend on how fast we could get that inside ready to go. That was the goal. The goal was to be done so Christie can have her festival of trees first week in November. We gotta get going if we're gonna get that done, so we got some time here.
So the first action you mentioned there, Jeremy, is going to be conditional upon second one being approved, I assume.
Yeah.
And then actual construction being mid-process. So, okay. Okay. So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah. Are the neighbors aware of this? Amy, they know that this would go up? Okay.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a comment from the applicant, or we're going to open the public hearing. If you'd like to come make a few words about your request for the tents, please do. If you could keep it brief, that'd even be better.
Alan Smith, Rochester Community House, 816 Ludlow, or my home address, 321 Wesley Street. Sorry, Nick. Things move fast around here. They have done. So we've done that many stop-starts, as some of you know. Actually, we're presuming we will not be under construction this summer. However, because we work 12 to 18 months in advance on bookings all the time, last year we were going to be under construction. We were about to come to you guys for planning permission, and it all changed when Mr. Weber got $2 million coming in from the state. So we stopped all that, but we got the tent booked up for 6 weeks in end of May, last week of May through July 4th. That's all it'll be up this summer. We're asking that you give us permission to do it. We are very, very careful with our neighbours, who we know a lot of. We get the support. Amy's been really good, as have the other neighbours about it. We keep the tent enclosed. on the that end, the south end of the pad where the tent goes. We don't allow people to open it. We do not allow any DJs in there, no loud music, and we spent $2,000 on putting up fir trees looking into Wilcox so that the tent's not as visible. So we went to great efforts to dampen it down. And then when we get under, hopefully we get under construction, because everything's on hold at the moment, it'll be in the fall, and that will just be on the maintenance on the south end of the building. Then we'd be tearing down the north wing next spring, a year from now. So that's where we're at right now. Sorry, Nick.
No, I stand, obviously, Alan, I didn't connect on that, I just thought it was for what I said. So now it comes up to, are you willing to let them expand the use of the community house while it's fully functional? So you're getting additional use, again, without any demolition, so that's up to the planning.
Good clarification for us. So thank you, Alan, for your explanation and overview on that. I'm going to open the public hearing at 8:45. This is a special exception for temporary use of a tent. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this? Okay, I don't see anybody. How about online, Rose?
No one online.
Okay, we're going to close the public hearing at 8:45. Anything from the commission?
Hang on one second, we need to be, I want full transparency. Because it's a public hearing, we should have sent out notices every within 300 feet, which would be Amy.
Yeah.
If we did not do that, we can't have this right now.
Right.
Okay.
Are you sure we didn't? Because I know we set the public hearing, this is to actually have the public hearing, so if we didn't notice it, we can't.
It is stated that way in the agenda.
Yeah,
and in the packet. Okay, so I'll ask for a motion to withdraw this, or just, this goes moot, okay. Table?
Table.
Any objection to a table? No. Hearing none, tabled. Okay, no worries, we'll move on to the next item, which is to have a site plan, public hearing on the actual construction, new design. And I'm going to turn that over to Vidya to give the report.
If we didn't notice this, we can't do this either. I don't think either of them.
Oh, you didn't notice this one either?
I don't believe so.
Okay, well, then, I'll ask for a
Sorry.
motion. Everybody okay with tabling?
Motion table.
Okay.
Sorry, Vidya.
Any objection? Item table. Okay, considerations we've already covered. Earlier, we moved that item forward, so I'm going to jump to miscellaneous, number 7. There is an item, oh, I'm sorry. Item A, I'm kind of confused between front and back here. So we have consideration, item 6, which is consideration of 626 Main Street for a site plan approval of a facade change for Cottage Inn Pizza. Vidya, I'm going to turn that over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to provide clarification that this is not site plan approval. This is for scheduling of a public hearing. This project has not been before you. So tonight you're going to be scheduling it for public hearing. So I will go over the preliminary comments. I will share my screen. Okay.
And this item lacked some information, is that correct, that you wanted to see more of?
Yes, this is actually a second review of the project. It still has some outstanding items. However, I wanted the project before the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has to make a motion to set this for public hearing so they can come on your next agenda for consideration of site plan approval. They haven't been before you previously. So the request is from James Withrill on behalf of 630 Main LLC to operate a Cottage Inn Pizza restaurant within an existing strip commercial building. The plan proposes to renovate an existing lease space. The Planning Commission is familiar with this site. It's on North Main Street, and you recently reviewed the outdoor dining space for Paul's on Main restaurant. This site is located on the same parcel itself. This is a small strip commercial building which has got a vacant tenant space and a flower shop. So Cottage Inn Pizza and a Chicken Fingers place is occupying this tenant space itself. So the proposed Flower shop is a retail use. It's a principal permitted use. They've been there and they're staying there. The restaurant use is a principal permitted use in the site, which is zoned B1 General Business District. Now, we have reviewed the site. I'll go over some of the basic details of the site, and I will also go over the items that still require clarification. The site can be accessed off Main Street with the two-way access drive and off the access road to an apartment complex to the north, neither of which is being changed at this time. The plan notes a sidewalk on the north and west side of this business. So I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit more so the Planning Commission can see. So there is a sidewalk shown over here and there is a barrier-free access space shown, but the width of the sidewalk is not noted. I have asked for that previously also. The sidewalk needs to be a minimum of 5 feet in width, and we need to know whether the sidewalk is at grade or raised to determine whether it is ADA compliant. So that clarification needs to be provided. So now the site plan that they have provided includes parking calculations up here. And the parking calculations includes for all three sites. One is Paul's, one is the flower shop, and then it's the carry-out pizza restaurant. Now, the calculations that are noted on here basically says that 9 parking spaces are needed for the pizza place. For the pizza place, parking is based upon 1 space for 30 square feet of the lobby area or the customer waiting space. That's all it requires. So it says a total of 9 parking space is required. So that's basically out of a 2,000 square feet tenant space, parking is required only for 270 square space. We don't have a floor plan. So now if you're going to say about 1/10 of the square feet of a tenant space is the only one for which you're going to provide parking, I would like to actually see the floor plan to see if that is the only lobby space. It very well might be it, but a site plan that says only 1/10 is actually usable for parking needs to actually provide that floor plan so we can verify it. The parking count also on the site plan needs to be verified. It notes over here that there are 52 spaces. I've counted it multiple times. There are 51 spaces. The barrier-free parking spaces that are shown near Paul's, these are not ADA compliant. When we reviewed the site plan for Paul's recently, we had made that comment and these spaces were restriped correctly. While this building might be, while this tenant space might be a separate, this whole thing is portion of one site. So all the details shown on the site plan must be accurate. You cannot show non-compliant ADA spaces on the same site. So these spaces need to be shown accurately too. And the reason why this is important is when these 2 spaces are shown compliant, you're likely going to lose 1 more parking space out of this whole lot. So the number of parking spaces in the lot is going to change. We want an accurate parking count for that reason. There are 2 dumpster units up here. These dumpster units are clearly visible from the apartment buildings over here. And right now there is just a unit sitting there. There's no enclosure. So the applicant is putting enclosure with gates on concrete pads, which will make the site look a lot nicer on that side. The applicant has noted that there is a stepped masonry screen wall over here. We have repeatedly asked for photographs or a note on what the condition of this wall is. If the wall is not in good condition, our recommendation would be that the wall be power washed and maybe, you know, the brick be pin tucked or whatever it needs to be done to repair it so that it looks good. But we don't know what the condition is, so we cannot make a recommendation on it at this time. Now, we need to know what the lighting for the proposed building is. If there are any existing light fixtures on this building or if any of the fixtures are going to be replaced. That is important because if you're going to have light fixtures on this side or this side, if they are not shielded fixtures, they are going to shine straight into the apartment buildings located over here. There is apartments located in the back too. So these lights can be a source of nuisance to residential homes. So that is why it is important for us to actually see what the existing fixtures are. If the existing fixtures are not shielded, they should be shielded. If they are putting new fixtures in, all we need to see is the manufacturer's cut sheet detail. Now this is the proposed elevation. The existing building has got 2 dormers like this. The applicant is proposing to demolish one dormer and put in this new gable on one end. The building is going to look different. I mean, it's a single building and one half of it is going to have a gable like this and the other half of it is going to have a small dormer. It's going to look very unusual, or architecturally it's going to look a little lopsided. So wanted the planning commission's input. It probably will look great, but I'm not sure. I've not seen a building that is not architecturally balanced. This looks a little imbalanced, but if the planning commission feels that this would create a separate, distinct storefront, that is fine, but I just thought I should bring it to the planning commission's attention that this building is going to look unusual. So the site plan indicates a significant amount of wall signage. This is a lot of signage for this building, and we wanted to see exactly how much of wall signage is being proposed. And there is a note over here saying the total square footage, but there is no details provided on how exactly this wall signage was calculated. Typically, signage is under the purview of city manager and administration. However, in this case, we did ask for it because the amount of signage being proposed on the facade is overwhelming. It actually detracts from the architecture of the building. So I wanted to see exactly what amount of signage is on this building to see if it far exceeds the ordinance requirement itself. And finally, with regard to landscaping, the applicant is proposing no new landscaping. Our recommendation was that some additional shrubs or something be placed, a few additional shrubs be added to the frontage along Main Street so the site looks a little better. This is labeled as existing landscaping, but there's really no landscaping over there. There are a few straggly little shrubs there. The site could definitely use some enhancement, especially since Paul is doing a lot of landscape enhancement on this end. So adding a few shrubs would definitely make this portion of the site also look attractive. Provided the applicant fixes all these things and submits a revised plan that addresses all of the outstanding items, it is our recommendation that the Planning Commission place this for consideration of site plan approval on your next available agenda. I would recommend that the Planning Commission direct the applicant to provide all the information. We do not want to bring an incomplete site plan before you with so many unaddressed issues next time. Thank you. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Vidya. Is there someone in the audience from the applicant? Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. Jimmy Asmar, Superior Hospitality, 7031 Orchard Lake Road, West Bloomfield.
James Humiski, Cottage and Pizza, 4390 Concourse Drive, Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Thank you for being here, guys.
Thank you.
You heard the comments from the planner. There's some information we need to move this into a forum where we can really make a decision on it. From a time standpoint, she's recommending the next meeting, and that really depends on you.
Absolutely.
Are you going to be able to address these items in a time that she's going to be able to review it?
Absolutely. We think we can turn these around very quickly and get on, hopefully get on the next agenda.
Okay. Was there anything you wanted to add to what she, or respond to what she?
No, everything on the request makes sense. We've talked to our design consultants that we're working through all the items, and they don't think anything that was brought up is really an issue, that we can resolve everything.
Okay. Could you add a little bit of a background to the adding that gable on one end?
I need to jump in before they say anything. So I don't mean to be rude to you guys, and I don't know if I talked to either of you on the phone. Okay, so you might want to sit down for 1 second. Sure. So here's the history. So we got a call about 6 months ago from Cottage Inn. Great, we'd love to have you here. And they were calling about, the reason we knew they wanted to go there was they brought in a sign request. So we said, well, we have a process here. If you want to move into that space, so formerly it was a woman's workout place, you have to apply for a change of tenancy. I can't process your sign until we know that you have a change of tenancy that's approvable, because you're changing the use significant. We don't know if you have enough parking. I assume you're going to want to change the facade. You have to go to the planning commission. Nope, we just want a sign. Okay, well, I can't approve the sign until we know you have all the status. So stalled for 2 or 3 months. This was coming from Cottage Inn in Ann Arbor, I believe. And then I said, if you want to formally submit a site plan, a sign permit, I will formally deny it until we get a change of tenancy. So we took a month and a half, we got through that. So about a month and a half ago, I went to Paul's with my wife, and I walked up, and that's already built. So I went into the building official and said.
Can you clarify when you say that?
That's built, the
The
gable's built.
gable is there and the dormer is.
So I kind of walked there and I went into Paul's, I said, he went through the ringer, as we know, to get what he needed approved. I said, Paul, you didn't even have any concern about this? Do you know about this? When did this happen? It happened over a weekend. So, I walked into that store, unfortunately for the two managers there, and said, when did you open and when did you build a new building here? And they're like, we don't know anything. I'm sorry, here's the name of the guy. So I texted that guy that night, very nice gentleman from Cottage Inn, called and profusely apologized, said, I am Cottage Inn, and I didn't even know they built this already. Went to the building official, said, did you approve that already? How could you, knowing it had to go to the planning commission? And Randy's like, no, I approved it, conditioned on planning commission action. So they have no building permits. They haven't submitted for any building permits. He did an initial review to say, if you want to do that, you're going to probably run into what Vidya just brought up, the balance on the building, the signage, et cetera. So, and then talked to the Cottage Inn guy who got to the contractor, and he said, I looked at my plans. I assume he got permits for the inside build out, which we do. You don't have to touch the outside. We will let you start so you can get open before Christmas, before the Christmas season. That's okay, but you just can't do that until you go to the planning commission. The contractor's excuse was, well, it was on the plan, so I assumed I could build that. It was circled in red. You can't do this. I'm sorry. So I told him, tear it down. You're going to go in front of the planning commission. We've had people tear the tops of their homes down because they didn't follow compliance. You think we're going to give in just because you built it before you were allowed to build it with no permits? We didn't know if there was electrical problems up there with the electrical for the sign. The sign was put up, everything. So Randy got up there. We looked at it all. Good news, and the fire chief, they checked all that. It will probably pass muster of a building permit if we approve just that on there. So I said, you have two options. Take the sign down or bag it. I don't mind if you put coming soon. That's fine, because that's possible on the inside, but you can't leave that. You don't have any right to do that. So immediately, next morning, they bagged the sign. It says coming soon, Cottage Inn, which is great. They're allowed to open up inside, but we have the right to say, do we like that or not? Don't know if the signage, I think the signage, they get 100 square feet. So the other people in the building have to give up some of their square footage. Unfortunately, Paul's has a sign, and then the florist has a sign, so it probably can't be that big. The sign they put up isn't that big. It's even smaller because they figured out what 100 square feet is. So it's very convoluted. It was kind of like ask for forgiveness. They say, I'll take the guy's word. I thought I was allowed to build this. You usually don't build on weekends. You can't work on Sunday anyway, but he did. So that's the story. And again, these gentlemen probably don't know all of that. And Lydia didn't even know all of that. And we're glad to take it through the process. And I'm glad that they said they could get the information that you all need for that, make that decision. But we would like your opinion on the balance of that building. Again, we don't have design standards, but I agree with her. Why not do it right? And when we did the machine shop down at South Main, we had them do the whole facade, not just pieces of it. So it would not be unheard of for us to say, look at the whole building, not just that. They called that just a sign. It's a mansard. It's a brand new mansard. It's not a sign. The sign are the letters. So that's where we're at.
Thank you for that background, Commissioner Hauser.
Who owns the building? Does the owner even know this happened?
Yes, and they've never pulled permits for everything before, and so they know, they had to sign off on the.
Commissioner Kinzer?
Well, I'm glad to know I'm not hallucinating when I took a look at the building.
Because I just showed him the picture, yeah.
But even beyond the gable that was made, the dormer that remained, it's all rotted. That needs to have some attention, and some other things need to be taken care of as well.
Okay. Coming back to what we're talking about in terms of moving forward, not the background. What's your opinion, thought on that, based on what you're seeing tonight? Is that I guess we're looking for feedback. We can't say no, but we can offer feedback on like or not like.
Had I not heard the story, that never happened, I would probably say no. That doesn't, symmetrical for reasons, and it's just the aesthetic. So I would not have said, yeah, that's a good look. Not even having heard the backstory.
Okay. Other thoughts down here?
I would agree. The building has no balance, like Vidya had mentioned earlier. It needs more on the right-hand side to kind of fit in on Main Street.
Commissioner Clauser?
Agree with the comments already made.
Thank you. Nick, you mentioned another property, automotive something. Which one is that?
Yeah, so it would be the, where, Giorgio's is, it had a facade on it. They came in and wanted to do they wanted to just put a bigger facade, and we decided to go back to historic, as close as we could to the machine shop.
that whole
remember that?
building, yes.
So not just, they just wanted to do a piece. We said, do the whole building if you're gonna do it. Do the whole building if you're gonna do it. Yeah, not on Cottage Inn's dime, but the owner of the property should be here and express why he has a rotted dormer, which we can write up for code enforcement. But why not do your whole building? Here's your opportunity. Obviously, Cottage Inn paid for that side of it. The florist is not interested in paying for it, they said, so, but we would.
Commissioner Gasson?
Yes, Vidya.
I'm happy to look into other buildings that have been retrofitted that Cottage Inn has gone into and make architectural suggestions of how they can make it better. Because this building, I didn't want to sound harsh in my letter, but the first time I saw this building, my reaction was, what on earth is this? Because it's very architecturally unappealing, and after the amount of architectural detail that Paul's on Main put into their building to make it enhanced, this architecture is a massive step down on the same parcel. I'm happy to provide the applicant with some architectural guidelines on how to improve this facade before they come in front of you, because this is not something that I think really adds to our North Main Street corridor at all.
Yeah, and again, not to put the burden on Cottage Inn, they did it, but it's not their building, so if they wanted to tear the mansard down and put the dormer back, they could do that and just ask for a change of tenancy, and they're already in there, they're legally in the building. But it's the building owner that should be responsible for this.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
Well, one more I'll note, years and years and years ago on Main Street, across from the building you referenced, I don't know what it's called, like
The
there's
rack, yep.
There's a Subway shop and there's a Quick Stop or some kind of.
Where
Quick
Manny's,
Takedown.
where
Yeah,
Manny's is.
so there were 3 or 4 tenants there, and one wanted to do something similar and do nothing to the rest of the building. I think the planning commission, administration at that time said, take a holistic look at it. I mean, it's very simple what it is. It ended up simple, but it would have been really goofy if they would have done one thing and not the whole thing.
And we don't get our shots at this until there's a change of tenancy where we can work with the owner and try to, make their property worth more money, actually, so.
At least we know he's quick in improving the building.
Well, I think, hopefully you heard what, some sentiment is up here about more about the look, not the process. Process is different, but,
If you want to get the owner of the building in here, I'll be glad to talk to him.
We've tried to engage him, he's not interested in being engaged whatsoever.
I know, that's the problem.
We just stopped him from putting the Tinas up there, like, we didn't realize what was going on until it happened, so I told the guy to stop the Tinas, like, it's not all up there.
Yeah.
It's halfway up.
Okay, well, you have a bit to do. You have to solve some of what you heard up here, not just finish what was on the report from the planner. And if you can be back in time in terms of the submittal to make it to the April meeting, we'd be glad to see you then. 3 days, so you need to talk with the administration to figure that out, but it sounds like an uphill kind of thing. So I'll look for a motion from the commission, and maybe it's not April, but maybe as soon as.
Next available.
Next available. Or however you want to make the motion.
Motion to table, is that what you're suggesting, or?
I would say a motion to come back when you're ready. You don't have to table it, but it has to be ready in 3 days if it's April.
We could be ready in 3 days.
That's fine.
Okay.
Let's give it a go.
I would just use the as soon as available, just in case it's not 3 days. If I were the motion maker.
And then you don't have to come back and wait another whole month staff to come for the next one, so.
Okay, I'll take that not as a motion. Nod down here for a second.
Support.
Okay, we have a support motion, and I'll just restate that, to submit as soon as possible for next available meeting, and we'll see it if it goes through the process and is acceptable to the planner. I added a few words there, Commissioner Kadzuk. Any question on the motion? Roll call? Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Bachman,
Yes.
Clauser,
Yes.
Hardin,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
Stone.
Yes. Excellent. Public comment. Anybody still here would like to make any follow-up comments? Yes, ma'am. I think you're Miss Linda?
Yes, the damage, 333 Greg. Thank you for letting me speak again. I actually just have a couple questions. I'm not sure if that's appropriate.
Could you
but-
state your name again at the microphone, if you don't mind?
Yes, Linda Gamage, 333 Griggs. And I am wondering what the process for for a change to the master plan is. Because as I referenced before, in the meeting minutes from your last meeting, the attorney stated that it can be made prior to every 5-year. Changes can be made prior to every 5 years.
That's a good clarification in terms of question. My answer would be, and I'm going to let the professional do it, but at the next point where we address the master plan on the 5-year cycle would be the time to do it. But Vinnie, I'm going to defer to the real answer from you.
You can request, you don't have to wait for the 5-year cycle. You can request a written amendment to the master plan. There is a process. However, I believe in order to request an amendment to the master plan, especially if you're looking at a specific parcel, you need to have some interest in the parcel. I'm sure Attorney Kraft can pitch in, but the master plan process can be initiated by a resident. If you want to have the master plan amended before the 5-year time period, you can so do. It varies in municipalities, but in most municipalities, if a resident or a specific party initiates it before the 5-year period, they undertake the cost and the responsibility of taking it through the whole process. Every 5 years, it is the municipality's responsibility for doing it. I don't know how Rochester would like to handle it, but that is typically how the process works out otherwise. Attorney Kraft, what would be the process if they are not the owner of the property for which they are seeking the master plan amendment?
Yeah, I guess I don't recall saying that it can be done earlier, although I think that's probably a true statement. I do recall my statements were that the city has to consider a master plan change, but they don't actually have to change it. It's just every 5 years they have to consider whether they're going to change it. I've never heard of a citizen-initiated master plan process, so that would take a bit of research to figure out how that would even happen. But I don't recall a master plan coming early, the process starting earlier than the 5-year-ish time period.
I have had developers initiate master plan amendments. Developers who have wanted to redevelop parcels, they have applied to a community, to the Planning Commission for consideration of a master plan amendment, and they fill out a request for master plan amendment. They write down a formal request and submit it, but then they have an ownership interest in the parcel for which they are seeking an amendment. So I don't know how it happens in this situation. This is a very unusual situation where a neighborhood would like the master plan amendment to change the zoning on a property which is not under their ownership. So this would be interesting and would require some investigation.
Thank you. So also I'm wondering what the process for the zoning approval, because it looked like the zoning, like not the future land use, but the zoning is up for approval as well, and I'm wondering what the timeline for that is.
That is going to be coming in the next few months. First, we are getting the zoning districts through, and then the zoning map amendment will come through, and that will be done the same way that tonight's text amendment was done. It will be advertised, it will be noticed, the map will go through a full public hearing at the Planning Commission meeting, then there'll be a recommendation to the City Council, and it'll go through a full public hearing at the City Council. So you will definitely hear about it, and I would definitely suggest that you sign up for whatever alerts the city had. I believe Jeremy mentioned that there is some way you can sign up on the city's website for public hearing alerts. So please do sign up for that, so you'll definitely get that alert, because that will be notified for public hearing.
Thank you. I did just want to reiterate, we do watch these, we watch for these, and the minutes from the meeting where the master plan change was requested was not clear that that was it was not clear that that was happening. So I'm just really concerned, and we would like to be notified for sure if there is a change to zoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Anyone else? Rose, anybody online?
No one's online.
Thank you. I did skip over miscellaneous, having covered it as beginning of the meeting, but is there anything from the commission miscellaneous wise? Maybe David, again, thank you for joining us. Is there anything you want to kind of give a little bio of yourself, introduce yourself a little more than just me saying David?
Oh, I know a few of you, and I've talked to you, a few of you before, and just wanted to say I'm excited to be here, and wanted to thank everybody publicly who had a role, Chairman, in the process of getting me here. Look forward to working with everybody, and yeah, just happy to be here.
Excellent. Okay, is there anything from administration miscellaneous wise? Okay, meeting adjourned.
Good to meet you, Jay.
Thank you.
Hopefully you enjoyed your first.
Good night.